The Fujifilm x100v is my favorite camera of all time. Many of you who've been with me on this journey know this. I've taken it everywhere, from camping trips to hangouts to festivals to different countries. It's been a companion, a partner, a means to capture the moment, and a way to document my life. So when the Fujifilm x100VI was announced, it was a must-buy for me. I pre-ordered the camera as soon as it was released, much to the dismay of my credit card. And for the past few weeks or so, I've been taking it out to stress test the camera, see how the new features work, and see how it stacks up against the x100V. And I'll have you know, I haven't watched any reviews of this camera. I don't typically watch any gear reviews or photography-related videos anymore, but I made sure to especially not click on anything 6 related. This is because the V is a special camera for me, so I wanted to give you guys my raw and filtered thoughts on the camera, and not to simply repeat things I've heard or seen elsewhere. I wanted to see and experience this camera for myself. So here are my first impressions. What's new? 3 things to note. This is not a tech or spec review, and we won't cover every feature, just the ones that stood out to me. And we might be all over the place today. Also, sorry about my voice today, I'm coming off a cold, so it might be a little bit raspy. The Fujifilm x100VI is more or less an upgraded version of the x100V. There are a few new features, but many aspects like the screen, the viewfinder, and the lens are pretty much the same, which is fine because those were already great. They didn't need any improvements. We also got a new lens with the upgrade from the F to the V, so I wasn't expecting them to do a lens overhaul. Some people may be disappointed with the upgrades because they weren't big enough. However, I personally think the upgrades were very worth it, and I'll tell you why. Let's start with IBIS. One of the big upgrades in the x100VI is the addition of image stabilization. For me, this is huge. It's one of the things I mentioned about the V in a review I did a long time ago that I felt like it was missing. I thought that if the x100V had IBIS, it would be an even more perfect camera. And it felt like a long shot at the time, but Fujifilm actually made it happen. So IBIS is a great addition for both photo and video. For video, the usefulness is pretty obvious. The x100 series are all carry-around point-and-shoot cameras, meaning they are meant to sling around your waist and shoot handheld. Bringing a tripod is always possible, but it kind of defeats the purpose of having a low-profile, casual point-and-shoot camera. Therefore, most of the times, you'll be shooting handheld. And IBIS will help you get cleaner, less shaky handheld video, especially since the 6 is a beast video camera. Now for photography, many of you guys won't need IBIS. The V was already a fantastic low-light camera. It's got a wide f2 aperture, usable noise even when you bump the ISO to 6400, and a great built-in flash if you have no direct light source. So IBIS wasn't necessary in terms of low-light photography, but it is, of course, a welcome addition. Because now I can lower my shutter speed about 1 to 2 ticks, get more light in my camera, and shoot without flash if I want to. The built-in flash is great, but it can blind people, make it obvious you're taking pictures, and get you kicked out of events. So I welcome IBIS for both photo and video. I've still yet to fully test how good it actually is, but on paper, it sounds great. The lens on the x100 series is fairly small, and the 35mm equivalent should be fairly easy to stabilize. So I don't think we'll see too many problems with handheld shots, but again, we'll see. Another upgrade I think matters a ton is the processor. It's probably not an exciting thing to talk about because it's an expected upgrade for this kind of camera. But the reason why I think it's an important upgrade is because of how the V handled custom Fujifilm film simulation recipes. When shooting with the x100V, there was a bit of a processing lag whenever shooting in a custom film simulation recipe with any sort of clarity bump. For 99% of the operations, the camera was quick and smooth, but anytime you changed clarity or made adjustments to clarity, the camera seemed to struggle a bit. So hopefully the new processor makes it easier to process not only video and the new sensor, but also clarity in custom film simulations. As for the sensor, we've got 40 megapixels now. And I'm actually not sure whether to celebrate or not, because although 40 megapixels puts us into sort of a competitive range with all the newer generation cameras, it also comes with downsides of its own. In my opinion, the perfect amount of megapixels is 24, which was what the x100V had. It's usable enough to get high quality images with enough flexibility in post. It also resolves really well for printing. Heck, even 12 megapixels is good enough for print. And although more megapixels seems great on the surface, it comes with one tiny problem. It takes up more space. And if you're anything like me, I'm always running out of storage. I've got a decent archival system right now, but I'm worried about all the thousands and thousands of images I'll be taking over the next 5 years. And the ideal solution isn't to take less photos. For indication, the raw files of the 6 are about 83 megabytes, while the raw files for the V are about 54 megabytes. So there's about a 30 megabyte increase in the file size, which doesn't sound like much, but will definitely add up in the long run. If you shoot thousands and thousands of photos over years and years, you're definitely going to run out of space. And although space is getting cheaper as technology advances, figuring out storage, backups, and archival solutions is a headache on its own. So this isn't to scare you, but more megapixels can mean more problems. Another big upgrade for the 6 is its video capabilities. We now have the ability to shoot 6K 10-bit 422 internally, which is insane, and might be a little bit overkill. In my opinion, 4K is great, but we've never really needed anything past 1080p, especially if you're just making YouTube videos like me or capturing moments with your friends and family. What am I going to do with that kind of resolution? Zoom in on the pores of my skin? But I do understand, the more the better, and camera companies are getting increasingly competitive, so they gotta raise the specs on their cameras. There is a small crop when shooting in 6K, but nothing too noticeable. And paired with IBIS, IS boost, and video slow-mo capabilities, this makes the X100VI and even more of a beast video camera. Many of you guys will use the 6 for mainly photography, but I think having video capabilities like this in your camera at your hand is exciting to say the least. There are a few video upgrades I would like to see in the future, however. Something like a one-press recording button so I don't have to go into the drive menu to switch to video and change my settings every time I switch between photo and video. And of course, better built-in audio would be nice as well. So a final new tiny change I want to point out in the X100VI is the tilting screen. It pulls out just slightly more than the X100V. This makes it a tad easier to see the screen when you're shooting at waist level because the screen is no longer slightly blocked by the viewfinder. Now, this wasn't really a problem to begin with. I never experienced this when I was shooting with the X100V, but it is nice to see Fujifilm pay attention to small details like this. I think that's part of what makes the X100 series so great in the first place. First photo session experiences. One of the things I've been excited the most for in this camera is the updated film simulations. And no, I'm not talking about Reala Ace or Reala Ace, however you pronounce it. I'm talking about Nostalgic Negative. This is what I've been waiting for. Nostalgic Negative was first introduced a few years ago to a GFX Fujifilm body and newer Fujifilm bodies as well. And the moment I saw it, I thought, I want to try that. And so I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, but we never got the update for the X100V, which makes sense. They don't typically add newer film simulations to older bodies, but it was kind of hopeful thinking. And I've tried the custom Nostalgic Negative recipes. They don't quite hit the mark. So ever since I got the X100VI, that's all I've been shooting in. And most of the photos you guys will be seeing today are all straight out of camera JPEGs. I'll save the edits for the next video. Lightroom hasn't fully updated their program to have Nostalgic Negative and a few other film simulations in there yet. So I've been bringing the X100VI along with me to most of the situations you'd expect. Everyday life, street scenarios, and just hangouts with friends. And so far, the shooting experience has been about the same as the V. The camera is more or less the same after all, which is a good thing. It works great, feels great, looks great. And the shooting experience is the last thing you'd want to change with this camera because it was already good. Remember, new isn't always better. As for Nostalgic Negative itself, it's been a very interesting film simulation. At first glance, it seems like a cross between Classic Chrome and Classic Negative, which are two of my favorite color film simulations. It has a flatter contrast, much similar to Classic Chrome, without the harsher highlights of Classic Negative, while keeping this kind of soft glow amber highlight. Skin tones also seem to have an interesting look. They're a cooler, softer, neutral brown. So already, I like it. Many of Fujifilm's other color simulations like Provia, Velvia, and Astia were all a little bit too strong for my taste. But Nostalgic Negative has an interesting look without being too forceful or boring. It's also versatile for many scenarios and overall just looks nice. It's already shooed its way up into my top 3 film simulations along with Classic Chrome and Classic Negative. Silver versus black. As you guys can tell, I got the X100VI in silver. I figured because I already have the V in black, I might as well switch it up with the 6. And upon getting the silver one, I've noticed the difference between the two. The silver and black don't just look different, they feel different. The silver has kind of a soft, matte aluminum finish, while the black one has a glossy overcoat type of finish. I think this is because the silver actually isn't painted on, correct me if I'm wrong. And I'm totally geeking out right now because this has nothing to do with the camera itself. But the point is, the silver is really nice. I used to just want the black version because it's stealthier, lower profile, and just sleek. But now I'm starting to really like the silver version. It doesn't catch fingerprints like the black version, it feels nicer to hold, and it looks nicer when I'm taking product photos. Also, I think the black is more likely to chip as time passes by. Again, don't quote me on this. The only one main problem with silver was, it was tough finding a matching UV filter. One minor problem. As much as I'd love to sit here and praise the X100 series, there's one main problem I found with the 6. And it's a very minor one. Typically, I like to have my custom film simulations on a custom button. This allows me to rotate between my film simulation recipes and also preview and see how light and color look like based on the type of day. With the update in the 6, we still have this function except for one small change, and that is, it doesn't keep the ND filter toggled for previews. What I mean by this is that each custom setting has its own ND filter setting. You used to be able to toggle your ND filter on and off and then cycle through your film simulations, and it will keep that ND exposure setting the same. Now each custom setting has its own ND filter toggle setting depending on when you had it on or off when you last used it. So I see what they were doing here, but it's actually quite annoying. Let me explain this better. What I liked about the preview aspect is that I could cycle through my custom film simulations while keeping the exposure settings the same as I looked through each preview. That way I could more accurately see the lighting, the color, and stuff of the day and determine which one I wanted to shoot in. Then I picked the one that felt best for the day and location or scenario I was in, and then just be on my way. Now, as I cycle through the settings, some will be bright because they have the ND filter off, and some will be dark because they have it on. And so it's more difficult to preview my image because the ND filter affects the preview. This is a minor issue, and you can always just select the film simulation and toggle your ND filter on and off to see what it looks like, but I notice it and it kind of bothers me and it does affect my shooting. So hopefully they change it back in a firmware update. Should you upgrade? If you are someone who already has the V and don't care too much about the new features, you probably don't need to upgrade to the 6. Most of the things I know and love about the V are still here. I will say though, the 6 takes everything we know and like and levels it up. So if you're concerned about it being a worse shooting experience for an already great camera, don't be. However, if you are just getting into the system and you are deciding between the V and the 6 and you don't know which one to pick, either one's a great option. They are both great cameras, and just know that the upgrades to the 6 are worth it, in my opinion. Now, unfortunately, I'm sorry to say, but I think both are sold out. The x100v has been sold out for a long time, and the x106 is now on back order on websites like B&H or Adorama, which is crazy because the hype has once again gotten the best of this camera. And if you want this camera, your real option is to buy it on eBay or resale or something. And as expected, the markups on the x106 are crazy. But the good news is that with the release of the 6, the resale for the x100v is now cheaper. So instead of paying $2,000, you'll be paying a little bit less. Point is, you can't buy either camera at market price right now unless you're really lucky. And if you're willing to wait, you can back order the 6. Otherwise, if you're not willing to wait, you can still buy the V for resale. It's still a fantastic camera. Do I like the 6? Let's finish this with a little story. Long ago, when I first got the x100v, I was like, man, this is the perfect camera. It has literally everything except for IBIS and the ability to use the ND filter in video. Fujifilm later added a firmware update which allowed us to use the ND filter for video, which I was very ecstatic about. And now in the x106 we have image stabilization. Plus there's a new 40 megapixel sensor, new Gen 5 processor, and 6K 10-bit 422 internally. Which you have to understand, that's insane. Think about all these upgrades they added to the camera with basically no added size. They minimized the downsides of these upgrades to the furthest extent, and some people are still complaining. You see, personally, I didn't want them to change the V. It's far too common that camera companies will try and add all these new features that end up ruining what made a good camera good to begin with. And it's also common that camera companies will add stuff that we simply don't care about. So I thought, if they could just not make this camera worse, that would be amazing already. And if I'm being greedy, add a little few features that I want here and there. And Fujifilm did just that, because it does seem like they understand their product. Each new iteration of the X100 series added a small little jump to eventually make this camera what it is now. And it's not a coincidence that people will hold this camera and feel as if the camera was made just for them. By the way, Fujifilm isn't paying me to say this. They could care less about me. These are just my thoughts. So as of right now, I'm very happy with the 6. I don't think it's as groundbreaking as some people are making it out to be based on what I've seen in titles and thumbnails, but it's definitely a great camera. And of course, I'm excited to shoot with this camera more and share more thoughts with you guys in the future. So if you like this, if this was helpful, share this video with another friend who you also think might like this. And my new photography zine, The Sinking Sun, is out. If you guys are interested, you can order a copy in the link down below. As always, guys, have a great day. Thanks for watching. Peace. Hopefully this cold goes away. God damn, my throat is killing me.